Hey guys, welcome to Teaching Modern Architecture. Today we're going to speak about the garden terrace of the Villa Savoye by Le Corbusier. Specifically, three architectural elements that Le Corbusier uses to define the spatial experience. Together, these three elements offer a fantastic example of how to manage space. And with that understanding, you'll be able to take it and apply it to your own project work. Okay, so a question for you. Have you ever been in a space that feels bizarrely big, awkwardly big, and you don't really know how to situate yourself or orient yourself within the space? Probably you have had this experience, yeah? Often, this can occur when an architect hasn't properly designed the experiences that are to occur within that space, or hasn't defined where those experiences are intended to happen. Let's consider the terrace plan without the two garden boxes and without the small table. I've drawn a hypothetical version of the plan without them. Without these elements, we can see that the plan is very undefined, and it is precisely the kind of big, awkward, and poorly defined space that I'm referring to. You can see that in this hypothetical version of the garden terrace, the resolution of the space doesn't go into any detail. Drawn like this, the garden terrace is little more than a large, empty volume. The terrace seems big and empty. More than that, however, the space is just dead and ambiguous. Even if there were chairs to sit on at the ribbon window, it would be a strange, undefined space with a lot of wasted area. Remember, in a properly designed space that has been well defined by the architect, a visitor is generally not allowed to drift or float aimlessly. They are not just given total freedom. Typically, in a properly designed space, the visitor is provided with subtle clues about what to do in the space, given subtle clues about how to move in the space, simply from the things that are in the space. One by one, I'm going to add these three elements back into the plan, and we can analyze and dissect the effect that they have on the space. First, I will add the garden box that is near to the circulation ramp. Let's place the visitor at the entrance to the garden terrace, after leaving the interior of the architecture. What we know is that the circulation ramp can be read as having loads of conceptual power. It is the central component of the Villa Savoye and its architectural promenade. For the visitor just entering the garden terrace, in all likelihood, they have just circulated to this floor on the circulation ramp, coming from the ground level. So the architecture wants to support the continuation of the visitor along the circulation ramp, continuing the architectural promenade towards the solarium roof. As a result, our first reading of the garden box can be as a gentle wall-like element that encourages movement towards the circulation ramp. This garden box can be read as the equivalent of the architect being like, "Are you sure you want to walk this way, or do you maybe want to go up the ramp instead?" For those who have just come through the door and are aiming to go into the salon space, this garden box forces them to walk around it. Without the garden box, the visitor would walk oddly parallel to the glass, and in this really strange way, be able to see into the space beforehand, which would kill all the suspense of the space that was to come. And then the visitor would make this awkward, weird, abrupt right turn into the salon, which would totally eliminate the experiential moment of arrival in the transition between the garden terrace and the salon. Adding the small table in briefly, we can see how it has an immediate impact on the circulation when traveling towards the salon. The visitor is given subtle guidance towards the salon along two paths that are far more deliberate, intentional, and purposeful. Although there isn't a path upon the ground that literally tells you the way to walk, i.e., there are no, let's say, colored pavers telling you the way to go, but now, with this table working in conjunction with the garden box, you feel somewhat as if there is a proper path to travel that is leading you in a certain direction. You feel like you're moving upon a strategic route. Remember, your job as an architect is often to guide the visitor by providing subtle suggestions, subtle clues, subtle hints about how you want the space to be used. Now, I absolutely don't deny that these moves are subtle. These are small things that we're talking about here. I mean, we're talking about garden boxes, for heaven's sakes, right? But Le Corbusier's use of them is masterful. And if we just pay attention to what he's doing, we can learn so much from them. I'm going to add in the second garden box. Notice that the space still doesn't have a focal point yet. This would be fine if the garden terrace were meant purely as a space for circulation, but that isn't the case, right? The garden terrace is a living space. It is a roof garden to spend time in, a place to sit and enjoy the sunlight. And we also know, of course, having seen the final plan, that Le Corbusier designs the garden terrace to have a table as its focal point. So, where should it be placed? When trying to dissect a space, one method that you can use is to consider the existing physical architectural elements inside the space, and imagine that they are each projecting individual, invisible projection lines off of them into the space. If we take latitudinal and longitudinal projection lines from the two garden boxes, it ends up looking like this. I will also add a line along the edge of the boudoir due to the presence of the overhang. Based upon the projection lines of the garden boxes, this is the logical center of the space, and this is where Le Corbusier places the table. My guess is that he shifts the table slightly downwards to avoid the column and avoid affecting the sight lines of the site. This region becomes the activated occupiable space, and all of this makes perfect sense because this space has the best view of the site through the ribbon window. We can evaluate the other possible locations for the small table to understand why Le Corbusier didn't choose them. These two highlighted spaces aren't the appropriate place for the table because they are both too oddly shaped and too awkwardly located to be the occupiable focus of the plan. The first highlighted space, although decently placed on its own, would cause three problems. The overhang right outside the boudoir is right above the table, making it a bit awkward. The garden box is immediately behind the table, which doesn't seem like much of a problem at first glance, but if someone was seated at the head of the table, let's say, it would block any circulation that was hoping to walk past. And three, definitely the most devastating problem, is it would create an enormous empty space in the garden terrace plan overall. The second highlighted space is not possible because it simply blocks all circulation into the salon space. This highlighted region is not the ideal placement either for three reasons. Number one, it would make the central gathering place away from the ribbon window, eliminating the nice view that Le Corbusier has set up. Number two, it could potentially make walking past the table difficult if anyone was seated there. And number three, it would make the area opposite the table into a circulation zone and is far too wide to be used just as circulation. Although circulation here would be pleasant, right next to the window, etc., it would not be particularly dynamic. Circulating there would certainly not have the changing, moving, ceremonial dynamism like the one experienced on the circulation ramp. And the ribbon window would probably be a bit low for a person that was 6 foot in height. Looking at the finished plan, we can see that it has a checkerboard strategy in its void spaces. In order to walk through the space, the inhabitant needs to move back and forth from void to void, moving across the plan. The plan is not simply divided in a binary way, with one large portion divided for movement and one large portion divided for static occupiable space. Instead, the two uses are well mixed and well integrated with one another, causing the garden terrace to be a dynamic mix of both circulation space and occupiable space. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, please feel free to subscribe to the channel, maybe give me a like. I also do architectural tutoring and essay writing help, so if you're interested in something like that, just send me a message on the information superhighway. See you soon. Ciao.